about hate speech legislation really quickly. Obviously there's been a huge backlash to that. Are you surprised by the amount of backlash there's been? I mean, we see Fianna Fáil at their parliamentary party last night, they've decided to have now a separate group to discuss this legislation, and the fact that perhaps their parliamentary party didn't really know exactly the ins and outs of this legislation while it was being voted through in the Dáil. Are you surprised by that? Do you think that if you went and you defined the word hatred like so many people are calling for, that would really quell this argument, and perhaps you might have a little bit more support on this?
I think there's a lot of misinformation out there on this. I think there's genuine concerns, but I think those genuine concerns are being fed by a lot of misinformation, a lot of it coming online. You only have to look at some of the commentary that is being put out there, that we're trying to shut down people's thoughts, their speech, that by not defining hate, we're leaving it open to anybody being charged for any reason or saying anything. And that's simply not true. So what I'm asking people, and I'm hoping to meet with many of my colleagues and anybody who has concerns here, if you look at the legislation we're bringing forward, so much of it is a replica of what we already have. And I think that's a point that's been missed. So there's been issues raised with me, whether around the powers that the Gardaí have, whether it's around particular language that's been used. It's an exact replica of what's already there. And as we'll all be aware, there aren't mountains of people being prosecuted for hate speech. Hate crime is new, and I think there's less of an issue for people around that. But from a hate speech perspective, I mean, the word hate, people know what hate is. And the legal advice to me, and I understand it, is that if you start defining hate, then you then have to define those words. So if you're in a court of law and you have 3 different words that are used in a piece of legislation to define hate, you then have to prove that all 3 of those acts or those feelings were pointed towards this person. So we're trying to improve our 89 law, which is already in place. You would start to make it more difficult, then there's no point in improving it. Like, the reason we're improving it is because it's ineffective. We've seen very few prosecutions. So if you actually make it more difficult for people to be prosecuted, we might as well not be doing this in the first instance. That's not to say we're putting in place protections for freedom of speech. We're putting in place protections for people who want to speak in a political vacuum, for people who are in universities, in colleges, in schools, for people who want to use their artistic license to say what they feel. This is really about people who go out, who intentionally or doing something knowing that it's going to cause harm, say things that are really harmful, really hurtful, and could actually result in people being physically hurt. And there are minority groups, be it because of their religion, their race, their gender, their sexual orientation, the disability they might have, that are at the moment really afraid in this country. And I met with some of them last week who were saying this legislation can't come quick enough.